I'm Judy Todia, and I volunteer here at Little Miami Historic History Connection and out at Fort Ancient. And we're looking for volunteers, and I'll be glad to help you. If you want to volunteer with us here at the History Connection, I'll help you sort out 50 years of Little Miami Expresses. And if that's not your thing, you can come out to Fort Ancient, shadow me when I do the school tours. When you learn a lot about American history that you never knew. So we're here to help. I'm going to introduce to you Pam Hall, who is the education specialist at Fort Ancient, and she also takes care of us volunteers, making her the most organized person I know. Yes, yeah. What she's done is she has gotten her Bachelor's of Fine Arts from the Columbus College of Art and Design in Fine Arts. Then she went to Miami University in Oxford, Ohio, for her master's degree. She's done post-grad work and doctoral courses at Xavier University and the University of Cincinnati. And most importantly, she taught art in public schools for 26 years. 1 year she was at Warren County MRDD, and 3 years at Cincinnati Waldorf School. It is her delight to share her teaching skills with adults and students who come to the ancient prehistoric earthwork. Pam, thank you very much for coming.
Well, you're most welcome. Thank you guys for listening, okay? I love sharing this kind of information with Fort Ancient, and we're so excited because the whole thing of working toward World Heritage started in 2008. And at this point, this June, we got the word that says, it's worth your plane flight to come over to Saudi Arabia. And at the end of September, it should be a World Heritage site, along with 7 other Hopewell sites in Ohio. And I wanted to give you a brief history of what people have done over the years, starting with the prehistoric time period and coming right up into our Hopewell earthworks and then to contact. So we have a lot of students that come out, over 3,000 a year. And it's really important, I think, to raise awareness to the level that the Fort Ancient people and the Hopewell people especially had attained over time. We're getting the World Heritage status on outstanding works of human genius. And, you know, when you think of the earthworks at Newark, which is the square and the octagon, and you think of High Banks earthworks, Sipe earthworks, this is Pythagorean mathematics over hundreds of acres. How did they do it that accurately? And our little Fort Ancient, it's the largest hilltop enclosure in North America. So all of the mounds that were made took them, you know, they were occupying that area maybe 450 years. So let's start out maybe 100 BCE, maybe to 450 at the most. It's taking 200 years at least to be working on building these mounds. And the thing that's so incredible is the astronomical accuracy, because out in our very front of Fort Ancient, there's a winter solstice sunrise opening. It was mathematically calibrated to do that, and it's been like that for, you know, it's still perfectly coming up, winter solstice sunrise. The opening right beside that, a 9.3 year moonrise. Then we're going across the street, summer solstice sunrise. And then an 18.6 year moonrise. Venus used to come up through one of the openings. And I always say to the students, what were the other 80 openings? Hello, it's not just walkways to come in, you know? So the genius of these people it's such a different way of being related to the environment and to the movement of the stars in the sky, to working inside the cycle of life. That's so different than how we're living in a predominantly left-brain technology society. So, and I impress upon the students, and it's really important that some of the wisdom gained by working with nature needs to be kind of integrated into modern times so that we can get back in alignment. And I think people are getting a lot more into that at this point. But let me say this, our museum at Fort Ancient focuses on people coming across the Bering Straits from Siberia into Alaska. I've worked with a native elder for 20 or more years that said, well, Pam, my people were Choctaw. They came across from the Polynesian Islands, across the Pacific Ocean, into Guatemala, and then up into the southern states. So keep an open mind as to, we don't know all of it. And the further we go, the more is coming in terms of the full picture. But if we're talking about Fort Ancient Museum, you're thinking about Ice Age, and people have what? Mastodons, mammoths, this kind of guy, he's up as tall as the ceiling, two fangs hanging out of his face, he's looking for us for dinner, just saying, and you've just got a spear. What am I going to do? Run him up against an icy ledge or something to get him stopped? Some of them, the burning tree mastodon that is there at the museum, the signage about that, that one got into an icy bog, and that'll slow you down. And so the hunting was precarious, to say the best. So, okay, we're talking 15, 13,000. And then let's time travel quickly. So here we go into the time period that's maybe 8 to 10,000 years, an archaic time period. When series of glaciers came down into the Ohio Valley, and we're right here at the point of where the glaciers stopped, they would come in, recede, come back, and recede. People started migrating down. Thank heavens, better hunting tools were developed. It wasn't like we had a vegetable garden. But at Fort Ancient, many of the students use an atlatl. So this is what I would set a spear up against, and then I could hurl it. Okay, I'm safely back 30 to 40 feet away from who I'm hunting. And it goes in a lot harder, much better hunting tools. Adaptation. So, people are taking a rock and making a groove in it. It's interesting for me, living in the area 33 years, to find things in the fields. Finding a rock with a groove and put sinew on it. Here we go. Like so, we've got an ancient hammer. Okay? This is the kind of thing we became aware of. And I wanted to show you some of these. These axes were gifted to us, but this is incredibly heavy. And to think of having that with sinew on a large stick, that's your axe at that time. Well, this was all going on right here in our neighborhood, There's other kinds of things that were developed, taking these metamorphic stones, which are very strong and heavy, but this is like a chisel. So to be able to do that, how do I cut down a tree? I'm maybe taking a chisel or an adze and cutting off the bark, and then you have to wait for the bugs to kind of let the tree die. It's easier to harvest. This is the kind of stuff that people were dealing with back then. And not easy, guys, because with for animals to, what are you going to cook them in? There's no pottery. There's no iron kettles. They make a bowl out of an animal's tummy. This was the facts. And then you would have to get hot rocks, about 1,200 degrees, red hot. Get the antlers, pull the rocks out, your meat and your water's in there, put the rocks in. Wow, what a temperature change. So then the rocks, kind of pieces went off into the food. So this is the kind of thing people were dealing with here in this area a long time ago. So that being said, we got to move onward here. It wasn't until 3,000 years ago that the Adena, now my samples are not very good here, but the Adenas came in and they were the first mound builders in the Ohio Valley. This area is full of also Adena mounds. It's just a domed mound. Those were burial mounds. These guys realized, doggone, I can make clay pots, and got the clay from the river and kind of sifted it and start building with coil, smooth it out with stone or shell, and you've got a vessel that, after you let it dry, fire it in a fire pit. Then you've got something, I don't have to put hot rocks into it to cook it. You just cook right over the fire. So it's kind of hard to realize what all people had to go through in this geographical area, until now. People also, as they came down into the Ohio Valley, realized, ooh, stuff's growing, okay? So we don't have to be nomads anymore. I could stay one season. I can grow my own gourds. So this kind of thing is going to dry. You're going to take the seeds out of it and you could create scoops. You can create big bowls and stuff. Okay. And then raising kind of starchy, high carbohydrate foods. Hunters and gatherers then. Stay one season, get all these things together, and store enough food up for the winter, then you could move on. So it didn't deplete the land. It was kind of a healthy way for them to live. That's what we were dealing with in this time period. But then when it came to the Hopewell, this is something totally different because people came into the Ohio Valley from all over the country. Well, what was the energy draw of Ohio to bring people in? From Wyoming, we know that. Nobody ever lived inside of Fort Ancient itself. But right outside, there were large caches of, good grief, obsidian from Wyoming. We know exactly where it came from in Wyoming. Copper from Michigan. Their artwork was incredible. Perfect symmetrical design. Copper metalworking. This one kind of blows me away. It's not based on the four directions. So the artistry, it's like, how did they do that? Because I know what it takes to do metalsmithing. Their mica came from North Carolina. There's the mica falcon claw in the museum. How did they do that? I could have a brand new mat knife blade and try to cut into a small sheet of mica, and I would ruffle up the edges very easily. But all of this, so it shows that they had outstanding artistry as well as being able to work with the Pythagorean mathematics. So the one thing that Native peoples would connect with spirit, God, and the one thing that distinguishes the Hopewell pipes from any other pipes is that it's all one unit. There's big native pipes in our museum, the stem and then the bowl. They're to be kept separate until they go into ceremony. Well, with the Hopewell's pipes, they were just all one unit. So if you ever see or your family has anything like that, more than likely it's Hopewell. I want to show you also, this is kind of the type of spearhead, or this would be more spear. It's interesting. You can find something that's real little, and then the archaeologist said, well, Pam, that's obviously has been a big spear, and then if it's broken, then they cut it down and reshape it. So the fields around here are sitting full of these beautiful artifacts. So if you ever have a chance to be able to go to Newark, to Hopeton Earthworks, the National Museum, Mound City Group, all of those, these are all going to be World Heritage Sites. And October the 7th and the 8th, we're having an open house. And for us, it'll be a happy day. Because at that point, then I feel that these things can be honored for what they really were. The one thing I want to say, with the way a native native peoples all through time related to nature is that nature was a relative. I had a native person say to me, Pam, if I lived as close to the Little Miami River as you do, that would be as much my family as my human family. So the connection is something that we've lost, that today. We've had a whole different orientation. So I think I love to say this, but isn't it interesting that quantum physics now says everything's related? Cha-ching. Something good to say for ancient wisdom. When the people came across the water, okay, they're coming over to try to create a new life. People had different reasons for coming. But the European orientation toward nature was that nature was a resource. It wasn't a doggone relative, all right? So here, when people came over, the French involved in trading, you'll see that in our museum. There was a wonderful canoe that was made by a Chippewa chief, 1867, 1869, something like that. Birch bark and then a pine tar resin, that was the glue, holding 10 people, if you can imagine, going down the river, I think it's awfully awesome. And here we go, because the big draw at that time, run, beaver, run. Because beaver was a fashion and used for fashion in Europe. So run or you're going to be made into a hat, okay? So here we go. French traded. They liked building relationships with the natives, etc. When the English came over, first thing they did, started, doing the measuring out the land, So I always tell the students there's two ends to one stick, okay? By trading and by the Europeans coming over, the natives were able to get new resources. There's iron kettles that'll last several generations, iron hatchets. It's better than that doggone heavy thing, It's a lot of different technologies like that. But then the other end of the stick is that then as more and more people came over, the natives started losing their homes. So this is the story in the museum. And it's a relatively large museum that people from all over have said, oh my goodness. So I wanted to let you know that Fort Ancient, it's a rich place to come and visit. There's hiking trails, and it's also a nature preserve. And I want to work with working into nature. We have a garden it's modeled out of 1,000-year-old probably plants, corn, beans, and squash, the three sisters. And that's the last group of native peoples that came up into the South Fort, back at the picnic area, etc., before contact. And they did agriculture all year round. They had the wooden fencing around it. Here's the thing, with the Hopewell, it was like a golden age. There was no fighting whatsoever. I said to students, I said, can you imagine people from Wyoming and the people from Canada and North Carolina, these guys are all speaking different languages. Yet they got together outside the walls in these huts that were made, had feasts together, communicated, got along. It was like a golden age. There was no archaeological evidence of fighting whatsoever. Now, later on, 1,000 years ago, what they call the Fort Ancient people, we don't know the proper name for any of the groups. Those people, there was more population, more competition for resources. And with that, then you find that there was some fighting, and archaeologists might find a skull with an arrow in it, So it just gives you an idea. And after that, here come our Europeans. So that's what I would love to share with you all today. And I don't know if you have questions. I'm here to share. So thank you.
Okay, so how did
So I don't know what it was, but I think it's curious that somebody from Wyoming is taking the long trip over to help build, you know. So it's in the mystery.
I want to know.
I understand. I would love to know. Because there had to be something very special about Ohio. So, does anybody else got anything to ask? It's okay if you don't.
The purpose of mounds then, at Fort Ancient, were just
Ceremonial, a calendar and ceremonial. Absolutely. So they're honoring the cycles of life, the natural, progression of the seasons. And that was it. It just blows me away. And you have the geometry where inside a circle that has a certain, diameter, then there's a square that can fit perfectly inside the circle and touch the edges. See, there's so much more that we don't know.
never will.
And not from the way we're approaching it at this point, yeah. The one thing that's really wonderful is now they have ground penetrating radar. So now you don't have to dig up somebody's relatives to find something out. And a lot of Fort Ancient, when they took the ground penetrating radar, the big ceremonial circle, Moorhead Circle, it's right across from the museum, 200 feet in diameter, big 14-foot tall posts all the way around. And the same as Stubbs Earthworks. The blessed football field is right on a sacred site. That was the largest wood hinge in North America. But here's the deal. When ceremony was over, the Hopewell took those big posts with them. Yeah. How you're lifting them down, and in Fort Ancient, the holes were 4 feet deep with big rock in there to hold that up. Take them, go, after it all was over. It just it's amazing to me. It just tickles me to death. Because the old stereotype tried to, say that the natives were this and that, and you find out they were very advanced people. And we just now know the tip of the iceberg. So, I know, mystery bag. The native elder always told me, Pam, put it in the mystery bag.
It's not easy to do.
I know it. But, so thank you guys for listening. No. Yeah. You're welcome.
Now I have to go to the museum again.